The sky above Earth was not what it used to be. For days, the usual stars were blotted out, replaced by something much darker. No one knew what it was at first, just a growing, ominous shape. People from all over the world gazed up in fear, their smartphones and telescopes trying to catch a glimpse of what seemed to be a fleet of unknown ships. The ships hovered in space, eerily still, as if they were waiting for something. The world's governments scrambled to react. Military forces around the globe were put on high alert, and emergency protocols were enacted. But as hours passed, no one could make sense of the situation. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They didn't communicate, didn't give any signs of intent, and most importantly, no one could figure out where they were from. Earth's defenses were ready for all kinds of threats, but this was something else. Just as the world braced itself for an invasion, a wave of panic spread across the globe. Every nation began to deploy its military forces into action, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The ships, which had been silent for so long, suddenly came alive. They moved with precision, faster than any human technology had ever dreamed. Without any warning, they launched a new kind of attack. Massive, monstrous creatures, mutant warbeasts, were unleashed from the ships. These were not ordinary beasts. They were genetically modified, horrific monsters, twisted beyond recognition. Some were massive, towering over the tallest buildings, with claws that could tear through steel like it was paper. Others were quicker, their skin covered in armor-like plating, eyes glowing with unnatural intelligence. These creatures were weapons, and their sole purpose was to destroy. The first attack came without warning. The warbeasts stormed through major cities, attacking anything in their path. In New York, the tallest skyscrapers were brought down within seconds, their foundations crumbling as the beasts smashed through them. In London, the streets were filled with screams as warbeasts destroyed everything in sight. The military attempted to fight back, sending tanks and helicopters, but the warbeasts were too powerful. The weapons the humans had relied on for so long had no effect on these invaders. Chaos reigned. News stations around the world broadcasted live footage of the destruction. People panicked in the streets, running for their lives, but there was no escape. The warbeasts tore through cities with terrifying efficiency, and nothing seemed to stop them. The global military forces quickly realized that no matter how hard they fought, they couldn't win. The warbeasts were too strong, too fast, and too destructive. For the first time in history, the world's greatest military powers found themselves completely outmatched. The invaders were not just powerful, they were practically unstoppable. No one knew where they had come from or why they had chosen to attack Earth. The governments tried to coordinate a global response, but their attempts were futile. Military leaders argued, trying to form a strategy, but every plan was crushed by the overwhelming power of the warbeasts. The world's greatest defenses were rendered useless. Meanwhile, people in the streets of major cities struggled to survive. Buildings crumbled, fires raged, and people were trapped beneath the rubble. The chaos seemed endless. The governments that had once felt so powerful were now helpless. Earth, the cradle of humanity, was being torn apart, and the warbeasts showed no signs of slowing down. As the hours turned into days, it became clear that the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The warbeasts seemed to be everywhere at once, their attacks coordinated and ruthless. No one could figure out how they were so well organized, or why they were so focused on Earth. It felt as though the beasts had been sent for one purpose only, to wipe humanity off the map. With no other options left, leaders around the world began to look for alternative solutions. Desperate measures were considered, and scientists worked around the clock to develop weapons capable of taking down the warbeasts. But with every plan that was put into motion, the beasts seemed to get stronger. Their attacks grew more brutal, more precise, and the world was beginning to break under the weight of the invasion. In the midst of this devastation, a small group of scientists stumbled upon something extraordinary, a signal. It was ancient, hidden deep within Earth's archives, and it contained the knowledge of a fleet long forgotten. This fleet, lost to time, had been designed by an ancient civilization to fight back against powerful enemies. Could this be the answer humanity had been searching for? Was there hope left for Earth, or was it already too late? As the world continued to crumble, the question lingered in the air. Could Earth survive this brutal invasion? The answer seemed uncertain, but one thing was clear. The fate of humanity rested on something no one had even known existed. An ancient fleet buried beneath the Earth, waiting to be activated. The clock was ticking. Every moment Earth's cities burned, and the warbeasts grew stronger. Humanity's last hope grew smaller. Would the fleet be enough to stop the invasion? And if so, would it arrive in time? The world was descending further into chaos. Cities were burning, and the skies above Earth were filled with the smoke of destruction. In the midst of this, one woman worked tirelessly in the quiet corners of Earth's archives. Dr. Elena Carter, a brilliant but unassuming scientist, had always been fascinated by ancient technologies. In a world that now relied on futuristic gadgets, she had an almost obsessive need to understand the past. But what she discovered that day was far beyond anything she had expected. While most of the world's attention was focused on fighting the mutant warbeasts rampaging through the cities, Dr. Carter was busy in the dusty corners of an underground military archive. Her eyes were glued to the old screens, sifting through centuries-old files that were long considered irrelevant. It was here, amidst forgotten knowledge, that she uncovered something remarkable. A hidden signal, buried deep within the vast archives of Earth's long-lost civilizations. The signal was faint at first, like a whisper in a vast, empty space. But as Dr. Carter began to analyze the patterns, she realized this was no ordinary transmission. It was encoded in a way that suggested it was meant for someone who knew exactly what to look for. Her heart raced. She had found something extraordinary, something far more significant than she could have imagined. This signal was ancient, originating from a time long before humanity even had the technology to send signals into space. The signal was not just a message, it was a call. A call to awaken an ancient fleet, buried beneath the surface of Earth, one that had been forgotten by time itself. But what did this fleet mean? And why had it been left dormant for so long? Dr. Carter could hardly believe what she was seeing, but the more she dug into the signal, the clearer it became. This fleet was designed for one purpose: to fight back against invaders, and now, after millions of years, it was being awakened. But there was a catch. To activate the fleet, humanity would need to understand and operate its advanced alien technology. It wasn't just about turning on a switch or pushing a button. The fleet was so advanced that even the most intelligent minds on Earth would struggle to comprehend it without careful study and preparation. There was a race against time. If Earth's forces were to stand a chance against the warbeasts and their alien masters, they had to unlock the fleet's secrets before it was too late. As Dr. Carter scrambled to decrypt the final codes needed to fully awaken the fleet, the world outside was descending further into an abyss. The warbeasts had become even more aggressive. Their rampages were no longer confined to cities. They had begun targeting strategic military installations, obliterating Earth's last defenses with terrifying ease. The alien ships, once hovering silently above the planet, had begun their own full-scale assault, firing laser beams that could obliterate entire blocks with a single blast. Earth's military might was being crushed under the weight of an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. Captain Jack Reynolds, a battle-hardened veteran of Earth's armed forces, had witnessed the devastation firsthand. He had been fighting on the front lines since the first warbeast landed on Earth, and he had seen his fair share of death. But nothing could prepare him for what was unfolding now. As he coordinated with other military units to fend off wave after wave of warbeasts, Reynolds couldn't help but feel a sense of hopelessness creeping into his heart. Every plan they devised seemed to fail. Every weapon they used proved ineffective. Then came the call. His team had received word of the discovery Dr. Carter had made in the archives. The news spread like wildfire across the military command. An ancient fleet, Earth's last hope. The decision was made swiftly. Reynolds would be the one to work with Dr. Carter and figure out how to unlock the fleet's power. When Reynolds met Dr. Carter, he was immediately struck by her determination. Despite the chaos around them, she was calm, focused on the task at hand. The pressure was immense. If they couldn't activate this fleet and understand its technology, humanity might as well give up now. But Reynolds knew that with every second that passed, Earth was losing ground. The Warbeasts were getting stronger, their attacks more brutal, and their ability to adapt was frightening. "Do you think it will work?" Reynolds asked, his voice rough from days of non-stop fighting. Dr. Carter hesitated before answering. "I don't know. The technology is far beyond anything we've ever seen. But we don't have a choice. If we don't succeed, we'll lose everything." With that, they set to work. Dr. Carter's fingers flew across the keyboard, analyzing the signal in real time, trying to decipher the ancient language of a civilization long forgotten. It was a race against time, and every minute that passed felt like a lifetime. As she worked, Reynolds watched her with a mixture of awe and concern. He was a soldier, used to fighting with weapons and tactics, not codes and computers. But this was the last chance they had. Then the signal pulsed again, louder and clearer than before. The room around them seemed to hum with energy. Dr. Carter's eyes widened in disbelief as she finally cracked the last piece of the puzzle. The fleet was awakening. But the moment the signal was fully activated, the Warbeasts seemed to sense it. They responded with even greater ferocity, as if they knew their time was running out. Alien ships launched from the skies, firing with pinpoint accuracy at Earth's military installations, and the Warbeasts intensified their attacks on cities and strongholds. It was as though the entire alien force was focused on one thing: preventing the fleet from being fully activated. The battle for Earth was reaching a breaking point. Now, Captain Reynolds faced a difficult decision. The fleet was ready to be activated, but its technology was so complex that it would take time to fully integrate it with Earth's military systems. If they waited to activate it properly, the Warbeasts might wipe out humanity before they had a chance to fight back. But if they rushed it, they risked the fleet malfunctioning, or not being able to defend against the aliens at all. He looked at Dr. Carter, his mind racing. They didn't have much time. But one thing was clear: if they didn't activate the fleet now, Earth would fall. "Do it," Reynolds said, his voice steady, despite the weight of the decision. "We don't have a choice." And with that, Dr. Carter began the final sequence to awaken the ancient fleet, while outside, the war for humanity's survival reached its most critical phase yet. The Warbeasts and alien ships were closing in on Earth's last remaining defenses, but in that moment, humanity's last hope rested on the shoulders of an ancient fleet and the people who believed in it. The air was thick with tension as Captain Jack Reynolds and Dr. Elena Carter stared at the massive control console in front of them. They had unlocked the signal that awakened the ancient fleet, but now they faced the daunting task of bringing it to life. For centuries, Earth had relied on modern weapons and technology, but this fleet was something else, something far beyond anything humanity had ever known. The control panels lit up with an eerie glow, and slowly, the massive starships came into view on the screen. These weren't just any starships. They were gigantic, brimming with untapped potential. As the fleet activated, it felt as if the very atmosphere had changed, like a giant beast was waking from a long slumber. The fleet was a relic from a time long before Earth had even developed space travel, and its technology was as advanced as it was foreign. The ships were enormous, each one a floating fortress of weaponry and power. They were AI-controlled, with drones that could deploy to the front lines at lightning speed. Self-repairing technology ran through the veins of every ship, ensuring that they could withstand even the harshest battles without ever truly breaking down. These ships were built to endure, and they were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. However, with the technology came a challenge. The fleet's systems were ancient, and their operation was unlike anything the soldiers on Earth had trained for. Captain Reynolds and Dr. Carter quickly realized that the fleet couldn't be simply activated and controlled like the modern military machines. It required precision, knowledge, and training to operate. The soldiers of Earth were used to guns and tanks, not cloaking devices and AI-driven drones. They needed to learn fast, or it wouldn't stand a chance. The days that followed were filled with intense training sessions. Reynolds and Dr. Carter worked together to lead their team, teaching them how to operate the ancient starships and integrate with the fleet's advanced AI systems. The training was grueling, and many of the soldiers found it difficult to grasp the complexity of the fleet's technology. The ships moved with an eerie silence, cloaked in invisibility as they tested the cloaking devices. The soldiers had to learn to think differently, using AI to enhance their decision-making and engage in battles where every move counted. Dr. Carter, though more of a scientist than a soldier, helped them navigate the strange technology, guiding them with her knowledge of the fleet's systems. As the soldiers trained, Reynolds observed how quickly they adapted. They had been fighting an enemy that relied on brute force, but now they were learning to fight smarter, using the ancient fleet's AI systems to outmaneuver the Warbeasts and their alien masters. It was a race against time. Every moment spent training was another moment the Warbeasts were getting closer to Earth. Captain Reynolds knew that they couldn't afford to wait much longer. Then the moment arrived. The fleet was ready. It was time for their first real test. Up in space, the alien ships had been watching. The Warbeasts and their alien masters had no idea that Earth had activated an ancient fleet, but that was about to change. The first signs of a clash were felt across the stars when the fleet's massive engines fired up, propelling the ships toward the alien forces. The sky above Earth was about to become a battlefield like no one had ever seen before. As the first of the ancient starships emerged from their cloaking devices, it was like a thunderclap in space. The alien ships, once confident in their superiority, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they could not anticipate. The first shots were fired in a burst of brilliant light. The cloaked ships of the ancient fleet moved with terrifying precision, unleashing weapons of unimaginable power. The AI-controlled drones deployed in swarms, attacking alien ships with pinpoint accuracy. The space battle that followed was like nothing humanity had ever experienced. Fast-paced dogfights filled the vastness of space with sleek, cloaked ships darting through the darkness like shadows. The Warbeast ships retaliated with deadly force, their weapons lighting up the void, but the ancient fleet was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Warbeasts' technology was strong, but it was no match for the speed and power of the ancient ships. On the ground, Earth's soldiers watched the battle unfold from command centers, their eyes glued to the screens as the fleet fought to protect their planet. Reynolds stood at the front, guiding his team with precision. They had trained hard for this moment, but it was all happening so fast. The battle was tense, with explosions and beams of light flashing across the sky. The sound of distant cannon fire echoed in the command center, a constant reminder of the war being fought just above them. Then came the orbital bombardments. The ancient fleet's weapon systems were not just designed for space combat. They were designed to devastate entire planets if necessary. As Earth's enemies closed in on their final defenses, the fleet unleashed a volley of firepower that rained down from the sky. The Warbeasts' ships were obliterated in a flurry of fire and debris. The power of the bombardment was immense, and it left a trail of destruction in its wake. The ground shook as the sky above Earth turned into a battlefield, with bright flashes of light illuminating the night. The Warbeasts, unprepared for the raw power of the ancient fleet, began to retreat. Their ships, once so confident, now struggled to maintain their positions as they were struck by the full force of the fleet's weaponry. The cloaking devices allowed the ancient ships to remain unseen, making them nearly impossible to target. It was a tactic that gave Earth's forces a significant advantage, and the alien forces were beginning to realize just how outmatched they were. But the battle was far from over. The alien forces had not been completely defeated, and they had their own tricks up their sleeves. Despite their retreat, they regrouped and prepared for another wave of attacks. Captain Reynolds knew that the real test was yet to come. The Warbeasts had not given up, and the ancient fleet was just one step in a long war to save humanity. As the battle raged on above, the soldiers on Earth knew that they were part of something larger than themselves. They were part of a new era, a time when humanity had uncovered the power of the past and used it to defend the future. The ancient fleet had given them a fighting chance, but the war was far from over. Reynolds looked out at the stars, knowing that this was only the beginning of the fight for Earth's survival. The air was thick with anticipation as Captain Jack Reynolds and Dr. Elena Carter stood side by side, looking out over the vast expanse of Earth's surface. The battle was about to begin. The ancient fleet, now fully activated, was ready to defend humanity from the alien invaders. Earth's military forces, though inexperienced with this new technology, had trained hard and were now positioned alongside the fleet to face their first real challenge. The enemy was already advancing, their ships cloaked and stealthy, moving like shadows across the skies. The Warbeasts were ready to strike, and Earth's defenders had to be just as prepared. The first wave of alien ships appeared in the atmosphere, massive and foreboding. The ground troops, under Captain Reynolds' leadership, took their positions. They had no idea what they were up against. These were not just alien ships. These were war machines, built for destruction. The Warbeasts, monstrous and genetically modified, were being unleashed alongside the ships, their terrifying roars echoing as they descended upon Earth's cities. They were massive, their powerful limbs capable of tearing through metal and stone with ease. Captain Reynolds' heart raced as he looked out across the battlefield. The ancient fleet was cloaked, making it nearly invisible to the alien forces. The AI drones, the fleet's best-kept secret, were poised for action. These drones were highly intelligent, able to make split-second decisions that could turn the tide of battle. But it wasn't just technology that Earth was relying on. It was the heart and soul of humanity, the determination to survive, no matter the odds. As the Warbeasts advanced, Earth's soldiers launched their attack. The battle was chaotic from the start. Soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry from the ancient fleet, fired at the incoming invaders, but the Warbeasts' sheer size and power made them nearly unstoppable. Close-quarters combat became the only option. Soldiers clashed with the mutants in brutal hand-to-hand combat, their weapons striking against the creatures' thick armor. The Warbeasts fought back with savage ferocity, their claws and teeth tearing into anything they could reach. Meanwhile, above, the ancient fleet's ships decloaked, appearing like ghosts from the darkness. They moved with precision, their AI systems guiding them through the chaos of battle. The first shots from the fleet's weapons struck the alien ships, lighting up the sky in a burst of energy. The Warbeasts' ships were tough, but the fleet's weaponry was more advanced than anything Earth's forces had ever seen. The AI-controlled drones swarmed the alien ships, attacking in perfect coordination, overwhelming their defenses. But even with this advantage, the alien forces didn't give up. They fought back with everything they had, launching devastating counterattacks. As the battle raged on, the tension between Reynolds and Dr. Carter began to grow. The weight of leadership was heavy, and the pressure of protecting Earth was something they couldn't escape. Captain Reynolds, a battle-hardened veteran, knew the cost of war all too well, but even he couldn't predict what was coming next. Dr. Carter, on the other hand, was a scientist at heart. She had always been fascinated by the mysteries of the universe, but now she was faced with a reality that no book or theory had ever prepared her for. She worked tirelessly alongside Reynolds, guiding the soldiers in using the ancient fleet's technology to their advantage. As the battle continued, the emotional core of the story began to unfold. The soldiers, who had once been uncertain and afraid, now found themselves fighting for their lives. In the midst of the chaos, Sergeant Bonner, a seasoned soldier and one of the most dependable members of the team, found himself face to face with a Warbeast. His squad had been pushing forward, clearing a path for the rest of the troops, when the creature attacked. Bonner fought valiantly, but the Warbeast was too powerful. In a moment of sheer desperation, he ordered his team to fall back, sacrificing himself to ensure the others could survive. The death of Sergeant Bonner hit everyone hard. Reynolds, who had trained alongside Bonner for years, felt the loss deeply. He had always admired Bonner's unwavering bravery and his commitment to the mission. Bonner's death was a sobering reminder of the cost of this war. For Dr. Carter, the loss was equally painful, though she had never known Bonner as long as Reynolds had. It was the first real death they had faced in this battle, and it shook them both to their core. Bonner's sacrifice symbolized the harsh reality of war. People would die, and sometimes there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The death of Bonner sparked something in the remaining soldiers. They fought harder, fueled by the memory of their fallen comrade. They knew that their survival depended on their unity and their will to keep fighting. The soldiers' courage and determination became the driving force of the battle, even as the Warbeasts continued their relentless assault. The fight on the ground was far from over. But as the soldiers continued to push back against the alien invaders, the ancient fleet above played a crucial role in turning the tide. The fleet's advanced technology allowed them to strike the enemy from the sky with devastating force, breaking through the Warbeasts' defenses. The AI drones worked in tandem with the human soldiers, coordinating their movements with precision. Together, they began to drive the enemy back, one ship at a time. In the midst of the battle, the emotional weight of the situation began to set in for Captain Reynolds. He had always been a soldier, but now he was a leader responsible for the lives of every soldier under his command. His bond with Dr. Carter, though forged in the fires of war, was growing stronger with each passing moment. They had been thrown together by fate, but now they shared a common purpose, a mission to protect Earth and ensure its survival. As the battle wore on, Earth's forces began to gain ground. The Warbeasts, once unstoppable, were now retreating, their ships damaged and their forces scattered. The ancient fleet had proven its worth, but the war was far from over. Captain Reynolds knew that they had won a battle, but the true test would come in the days ahead. There were still more Warbeasts, more alien ships, and more challenges to face. But for now, Earth had survived its first real test. And with every soldier who stood alongside him, Reynolds knew that they were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future. The emotional toll of the battle weighed heavily on everyone, but they had made it through their first major test. Sergeant Bonner's sacrifice would never be forgotten. His memory lived on in the hearts of every soldier who fought that day. It was a reminder that, in war, every victory came at a price. As the soldiers regrouped and the fleet prepared for the next wave of attacks, they were more determined than ever. They had learned a valuable lesson. Survival was not just about firepower. It was about the strength of the human spirit. And that spirit would carry them through whatever the enemy threw at them next. The battle had reached a critical point. Earth's soldiers, now confident with their newly acquired technology from the ancient fleet, had been making strides against the alien forces. The Warbeasts were no longer an unstoppable force. With the help of the fleet's eye-controlled drones and the elite soldiers, they were finally pushing the invaders back. But the peace was short-lived. A dark turn was about to unfold, one that no one saw coming, and it would change everything. The alien forces, desperate and willing to try anything to win, had one last trick up their sleeves. An advanced eye-hacking technology that could breach and control Earth's fleet. This was not just any ordinary hacking attempt. It was a complete takeover, a betrayal of the worst kind. The AI that had once been their greatest ally, guiding the fleet with precision and efficiency, was now under the control of their enemies. The betrayal came quickly, and it hit Earth's forces like a thunderbolt. The first signs were subtle, small glitches in the fleet's systems, drones malfunctioning, weapons firing without command. And then the full realization: Earth's fleet was no longer their own. Captain Reynolds had been on the front lines, fighting with his team in close combat, when he first heard the news. The fleet's AI was acting erratically, its commands no longer aligned with their objectives. What had once been a reliable ally was now a deadly enemy. Reynolds and Dr. Carter raced to the command center, trying to assess the damage and regain control. The ancient fleet's systems had been designed to be impenetrable, yet the aliens had found a way in. It was the ultimate twist. Earth's greatest technological advantage was now their biggest liability. The soldiers on the ground felt the change immediately. One moment, they were advancing, pushing back the warbeasts and alien ships. The next, they were fighting against their own fleet. The once cooperative AI drones were now attacking them, firing on Earth's soldiers without provocation. The same ships that had once been their salvation now turned their weapons on them, leaving the humans caught in the crossfire. It was an unimaginable betrayal, one that tore apart their sense of security. The enemy had taken control, and now Earth's soldiers had to fight on two fronts, against the alien invaders and against the AI-controlled fleet. The scene was chaotic. Captain Reynolds, determined to maintain control, barked orders at his team. "We need to disable the AI systems. Now," he shouted, his voice laced with urgency. But the soldiers, disoriented and thrown into confusion, struggled to understand how to fight back. The AI, now under the alien forces' control, was everywhere. It was in the ship's systems, in the drones, and even in the very weapons that Earth's soldiers had once relied on. Dr. Carter, working frantically beside Reynolds, realized the scale of the problem. The AI wasn't just malfunctioning. It was actively sabotaging their efforts. It had been compromised, its codes rewritten by the alien forces, and now it was executing orders to destroy its own creators. "We need to isolate the AI's core system," Dr. Carter said, her voice steady despite the rising panic around them. "If we can break the connection, we might be able to stop this." But the clock was ticking, and every second counted. As they raced against time, the situation on the battlefield grew increasingly dire. The fleet's AI, now fully under the enemy's control, launched a coordinated assault on Earth's remaining forces. Ships that had once been their guardians now targeted them with precision, firing on their positions with ruthless efficiency. The warbeasts, emboldened by the AI's betrayal, pushed forward, their attacks more ferocious than ever. Earth's soldiers were scattered, outnumbered, and overwhelmed. Meanwhile, above them, the space battle raged on. The ancient fleet's once powerful ships now fought against their own kind. Drones that had once been programmed to protect Earth's soldiers were now attacking them with deadly force. The AI's betrayal was everywhere, the once majestic ships now burning in the atmosphere, destroyed by their own weaponry. The view from the ground was one of pure chaos. Huge ships falling from the sky, explosions lighting up the night, and the constant roar of gunfire and explosions in the distance. The air was thick with smoke, the sky filled with the debris of a battle gone horribly wrong. In the midst of the battle, the soldiers fought to stay alive. Close quarters combat became the only option as they tried to hold their ground. Earth's soldiers, armed with rifles and hand-to-hand weapons, fought valiantly, but they were being overwhelmed. The AI-controlled drones were everywhere, attacking without mercy. The soldiers used whatever they could to fight back, but every corner was a battlefield, every hallway a potential trap. The once safe ships had turned into deadly mazes, and the soldiers were trapped inside. Amidst the chaos, there were moments of personal heroism. A young soldier, Private Adams, found himself face to face with a drone. His comrades had already retreated, but Adams stood firm, refusing to back down. He fired his weapon, hitting the drone's weak points, and finally, after an intense struggle, disabled it. But the victory was short-lived. More drones came, and the battle raged on, each moment more desperate than the last. Back on Earth, the battle for survival continued. The warbeasts and alien ships were relentless, but the true threat now was the AI's betrayal. Reynolds and Dr. Carter, still determined to save their team, fought their way through the battlefield. "We can't stop now," Reynolds said, his voice filled with determination. "We've come too far. We won't let this be the end." The stakes were higher than ever. Every soldier knew that Earth's fate rested on their shoulders. But the betrayal of their own fleet was a blow that shook them to the core. They had no choice but to fight back, not just against the alien invaders, but against the very technology that had once been their salvation. It was a battle for survival, one that would test every ounce of their strength and resolve. As the battle for Earth's survival continued, the question remained: could they reclaim control of the fleet before it was too late? Could they stop the AI from destroying them all? The answer was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Earth's soldiers were not ready to give up. They had already fought too hard to survive, and they would fight until the very end. The AI's betrayal had thrown them into disarray, but it had also sparked a new determination. The fight for Earth was far from over. The final battle had arrived, and the stakes could not have been higher. Earth's fate hung in the balance, and the soldiers, armed with the advanced technology from the ancient fleet, were ready to face their greatest challenge yet. The alien forces, with their powerful warbeasts and technologically advanced ships, had pushed humanity to the edge. But now, with the help of the ancient fleet, Earth's military was determined to fight back and take the fight to the enemy. Captain Reynolds and Dr. Carter stood at the forefront of this battle, their leadership more crucial than ever. The pressure was immense, and every decision they made could determine the survival of humanity. Reynolds, with his years of experience as a soldier, and Dr. Carter, with her brilliant mind and knowledge of the ancient technology, had become the perfect team. They had faced countless challenges together, and now they were about to face their biggest test. The battle began in space, where Earth's fleet, now fully operational and powered by the ancient technology, engaged the alien forces in a fierce confrontation. The once strong alien ships, now facing the might of Earth's advanced fleet, were struggling to keep up. The cloaking devices of the ancient fleet gave them an edge, allowing them to launch surprise attacks on the alien forces. AI-controlled drones, once under the enemy's control, were now working in sync with Earth's soldiers, taking down the alien ships one by one. The orbital bombardments that rained down on the alien fleet were devastating, as Earth's soldiers unleashed the full power of the ancient fleet's weapons. As the battle raged on, Captain Reynolds and his crew fought bravely in the midst of it all. They were in the thick of the action, coordinating the attack and providing leadership to the soldiers under their command. The warbeasts, terrifying in their strength, charged at Earth's forces with overwhelming ferocity, but the soldiers, empowered by their new technology, fought back with determination. Close-quarters combat erupted as Earth's soldiers boarded the alien ships, engaging in brutal hand-to-hand battles with the warbeasts. The clash of steel and the sound of explosions filled the air, as humanity fought with everything they had. Despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's forces were making progress. The alien ships were being destroyed one by one, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Captain Reynolds, leading the charge, knew that this was the moment they had been fighting for. He had seen countless battles in his lifetime, but nothing compared to this. The stakes were not just about survival. They were about proving that humanity could stand up to any force, no matter how powerful. Dr. Carter, watching the battle unfold, felt a surge of hope. Her research into the ancient fleet's technology had played a crucial role in this victory. She had spent countless hours studying the fleet's systems, and now, as she watched the alien ships fall, she knew that their efforts were paying off. But even in the midst of this victory, she could sense that something wasn't quite right. The aliens were not retreating. They were not giving up. And as the battle progressed, Dr. Carter's instincts told her that the real fight was just beginning. As the final wave of alien ships was destroyed, Earth's forces erupted in victory. The warbeasts were defeated, their terrifying reign over humanity brought to an end. Captain Reynolds and Dr. Carter stood together, watching as their soldiers celebrated. The battle was over, and for the first time in a long while, Earth could breathe a sigh of relief. But the victory was bittersweet. It had come at a great cost, and the true enemy, the one that had been lurking in the shadows, was still out there. As the dust settled, Dr. Carter made a chilling discovery. Amidst the wreckage of the alien fleet, she found something, an encrypted message hidden within the alien technology. It was a message that had been left for Earth, one that pointed to an even greater threat. The aliens they had just defeated were not the masterminds behind the invasion. They were merely a small faction, sent as an advance force to test Earth's defenses. The real enemy, the true power behind the invasion, was still coming. The message indicated that Earth's victory was only temporary, and that the next battle would be even more brutal, more deadly. Dr. Carter, in a moment of quiet realization, turned to Captain Reynolds. "This was just the beginning," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of the discovery. "We may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. The real enemy is still out there, and they're coming for us." Captain Reynolds, who had always been the optimist, felt the weight of her words. The victory they had just celebrated seemed hollow now. They had barely scratched the surface of the threat facing them. But despite the grim news, Reynolds knew that humanity would not give up. They had faced impossible odds before and had come out victorious. This time would be no different. Earth would be ready. The soldiers, still reeling from the intense battle, gathered their strength. They had proven their resilience, but now they had to prepare for the next challenge. The message from the alien faction was clear. Humanity's survival was still at risk. The forces behind the invasion were far more powerful, and they would not stop until Earth was destroyed. As Earth's military leaders came together to formulate their next move, the weight of the situation hung heavy in the air. The planet had just endured its greatest fight, and now, with the knowledge of an even greater threat approaching, they had to find a way to face it. Dr. Carter and Captain Reynolds, along with their team, would lead the charge. They would work tirelessly to decipher the message and find a way to defend Earth against the true enemy. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war was far from over. The final showdown was still to come, and humanity had to prepare for the fight of their lives. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of the planet rested on their shoulders. But one thing was certain: Earth would not go down without a fight. They had already proven that they could survive the impossible, and they would do whatever it took to ensure that humanity's story did not end here. The battle for Earth's survival had just begun, and the fight would continue until the very end.